The air hung heavy in Trenchtown, thick with humidity and the scent of jerk spice. It was the kind of heat that clung to you, seeped into your bones and whispered secrets in your ear. The sun beat down on the corrugated zinc roofs, turning the narrow streets into shimmering mirages. Children played barefoot on the dusty sidewalks, their laughter echoing through the labyrinthine alleys. But beneath the vibrant surface, a current of unease throbbed. Trenchtown held its secrets close, guarded by the ghosts of its past. Stories whispered on street corners, passed down through generations, spoke of a spectral presence that haunted the neighborhood's heart. Old Baku, they called him, a restless spirit forever bound to the concrete jungle he once called home. The elders spoke of Old Baku with a mixture of fear and reverence. He was a cautionary tale, a reminder that even in death, some wounds refuse to heal. They said he roamed the night, his mournful cries echoing through the darkness, searching for something he had lost. Some dismissed it as folklore, the ramblings of old men clinging to the past. But others knew better. They had seen the shadows move in the corner of their eye, felt the chill down their spine when his name was spoken. Marcus, Ava, Jelani and Naomi sat huddled on the stoop of Miss Ida's grocery, their laughter a brief spark in the oppressive heat. They were Trenchtown's children, their laughter as bright and defiant as the murals that adorned the crumbling walls. They had grown up together, their lives intertwined like the roots of the ancient banyan tree that stood sentinel at the edge of their world.
You know, I can't help but dream of faraway lands and impossible feats.
Marcus, ever the dreamer, gazed at the sky, his head filled with stories of distant lands and impossible feats. He yearned for adventure, for a chance to prove himself.
We have to stick together, you know. Our strength is in our community.
Ava, her eyes sharp and intelligent, held their dreams together with her unwavering pragmatism. She believed in the power of their community, in the strength they found in one another. Jelani, the quiet observer, watched the world unfold around him, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and ideas. He expressed himself through his art, his murals transforming the drab walls into vibrant canvases of hope and resistance. And then there was Naomi. Her spirit as fiery as the ginger blossoms she wore in her hair. She refused to be defined by their circumstances, her laughter a challenge to the darkness that threatened to engulf them. The conversation turned, as it often did, to the legend of Old Baku.
What if Old Baku is real? Imagine if we could actually talk to him, find out what he wants.
Marcus, caught up in the thrill of the tale, dared his friends to join him in seeking out the ghost. The others, a mix of apprehension and excitement on their faces, hesitated.
Why you always got to stir up trouble, Marcus? You know those stories are just that, stories.
But what if they're not?
Marcus countered, his eyes gleaming with excitement.
There's a reason why people don't talk about him directly. They say he's dangerous, that he feeds on fear.
Jelani, who had been sketching in his notebook, looked up, his eyes thoughtful.
Don't be such a scaredy cat, Jelani. There's no such thing as ghosts. It's all just stories to scare children.
However, even as she spoke, her voice lacked its usual conviction. The sun began its descent, casting long, eerie shadows across Trenchtown. The air, still heavy with the day's heat, took on a different quality as dusk approached. It was as if the very atmosphere held its breath, bracing itself for the coming night. Despite their initial skepticism, Ava, Jelani and Naomi found themselves drawn in by Marcus's infectious enthusiasm. Maybe it was the thrill of defying the unknown, or perhaps a deep-seated curiosity that gnawed at their courage. Whatever the reason, they agreed to meet later that night. As the last rays of sunlight faded, bathing the town in an eerie orange glow, a sense of foreboding settled over them. The stories they had heard since childhood, dismissed as mere folklore, now whispered through their minds like a haunting melody. The tenement on Sugar Lane, where Old Baku was said to reside, loomed in the distance, a decaying monolith against the darkening sky. It stood as a silent testament to a forgotten era, its crumbling facade a grim reminder of the passage of time and the weight of neglected memories. The tenement on Sugar Lane stood as a testament to decay. Its once bright paint had faded to a dull, ghostly grey, and the windows, most of them boarded up, stared out like empty sockets. The air around it felt different, colder, as if the building itself exuded a palpable aura of despair.
The four friends approached cautiously, their earlier bravado fading with each step closer to the dilapidated structure. The streetlights, dim and unreliable at the best of times, seemed to flicker and die as they drew near, plunging them into an unsettling darkness.
The rusted gate creaked ominously as Marcus pushed it open, the sound echoing in the stillness like a scream. The overgrown courtyard was littered with debris, broken bottles, discarded furniture, and other remnants of forgotten lives. Each footstep crunched on the gravel, the sound amplified in the eerie silence.
Maybe this wasn't such a good idea, Ava whispered, her voice barely audible above the pounding of her heart.
The interior of the tenement was shrouded in an almost suffocating darkness. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and dust, the oppressive atmosphere pressing down on them like a physical weight. They fumbled their way through the narrow hallway, their footsteps echoing on the bare floorboards. A single shaft of moonlight sliced through a crack in the boarded-up window, illuminating swirling dust motes that danced like tiny specters in the gloom. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the sound of their own breathing and the occasional creak and groan of the aging building. They reached the room at the end of the hall, the air growing noticeably colder as they approached. The door, hanging precariously from one hinge, creaked open with a low groan as if warning them to turn back. A musty, oppressive odor wafted from within, sending shivers down their spines. The hair on the back of their necks stood on end, and an instinctive sense of dread washed over them. The room was bare, stripped of any sign of its former occupants. Moonlight filtered through the grimy windows, casting long, grotesque shadows that danced and writhed on the walls. In the center of the room, a faint ethereal glow pulsed rhythmically, like the dying embers of a forgotten fire. As their eyes adjusted to the gloom, the friends realized with a growing sense of horror that the glow emanated from a spectral figure. It shimmered in the darkness, its form indistinct, constantly shifting and swirling like smoke caught in a gentle breeze. The temperature plummeted, sending a wave of goosebumps across their skin. A low, mournful moan echoed through the room, seemingly originating from the very walls themselves. It was a sound that spoke of ages of sorrow, of a pain so profound that it transcended death itself. Terror, primal and instinctive, threatened to overwhelm them. They stood frozen in place, their breath caught in their throats, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and morbid fascination. The spectral figure solidified, resolving into the translucent form of an elderly man. He was tall and gaunt, his face etched with lines of pain and sorrow. His eyes, hollow and filled with a deep, unyielding sadness, seemed to bore into their very souls.
Who dares disturb my rest?
The apparition rasped, his voice a hollow whisper that seemed to claw its way up from the depths of the earth. Terror gave way to a strange sense of pity as they looked upon the spectral figure. This was not the malevolent entity they had been led to believe in. This was a being trapped in torment, his spirit crying out for release.
Old Baku, we didn't mean any disrespect.
The ghost turned his sorrowful gaze upon Marcus, his ethereal form flickering slightly as if buffeted by an unseen wind.
The stories they tell, are they filled with my suffering?
A heavy silence descended upon the room as the weight of old Baku's question settled over them. They could sense the raw pain that emanated from him, the palpable aura of injustice that clung to his spectral form.
They say you were wrongly accused, that you were murdered for something you didn't do.
A flicker of something akin to gratitude crossed old Baku's translucent features.
The truth. It has been buried for too long. My name, my story, it deserves to be heard.
The children listened intently to the ghost's story.
We can help you.
Old Baku turned his sorrowful gaze upon each of them, his spectral eyes seemingly peering into their very souls.
Will you promise me this?
The friends, emboldened by a sense of purpose that transcended their fear, readily agreed to help old Baku. They left the tenement that night forever changed by their encounter. The world, once filled with the mundane and the familiar, now held an air of mystery and intrigue. They spent the next few days gathering information, piecing together fragments of a forgotten past. They spoke to the elders, their notebooks filling with half-remembered tales and whispered rumors. They scoured old newspapers, their fingers tracing faded headlines and cryptic articles that hinted at a cover-up. The deeper they delved, the more convinced they became that old Baku's claims were true. They uncovered evidence of a conspiracy, a web of deceit that stretched back decades, ensnaring those in power and silencing those who dared to speak out. The truth, they realized, was often a dangerous thing, buried beneath layers of lies and protected by those who benefited from its obscurity. But they were determined to bring it to light, no matter the cost. The weight of their promise to old Baku pressed down on them, a constant reminder of the injustice that demanded to be rectified. They knew that their quest for the truth would be fraught with danger, but they were undeterred. They had made a promise, and they would see it through to the end. The journey ahead would test their courage and their resolve, forcing them to confront not only the ghosts of the past, but also the very real dangers that lurked in the shadows of their own community. But they were no longer just a group of friends seeking adventure. They were the keepers of a forgotten truth, the voice of the silenced, and they would not rest until justice was served. The legend of old Baku, once a tale whispered in fear, had become a call to action, a reminder that even in death the pursuit of justice never truly ends. And as they ventured further into the heart of the mystery, they knew that their lives would never be the same again.